guys, greetings, and thank you for spending some time with me today. I am Chrysalis, and this is Women on Wrestling Editorials. This week, I'm going to be doing my hits and misses, which I think going forward, I'm going to start calling my pops and blown spots, because I think it's a little bit more fitting for the title, and we'll go over a little bit better just in general. But regardless, before I start my video today, there's a couple of things I wanted to do just housekeeping-wise. So that you're aware, I am basically watching all of my wrestling after the fact. We unfortunately do not have live TV at the moment, and due to that, I am catching Raw and Smackdown on Hulu after everything has aired, so excuse the bit of delay in getting my weeklies out. I have gotten caught up on this week's particular episodes, but especially with Raw, unfortunately the USA Network does not provide Hulu with the full 3-hour episode of Raw. They only get about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes of it at the most. So because of that, I only get the highlights of Raw basically instead of all of the little bits and pieces. So if you would like to see more of my content and a more in-depth version of what the actual shows are, I get the full show on SmackDown, I just don't on Raw unfortunately, then I would highly recommend that you join my Patreon. Information's going to be listed down below for you, and that'll help me to be able to basically upgrade my Hulu so that I can watch live TV in real time and provide you much more of an in-depth version of my pops and blown spots going forward. So with this week, I am going to start off with a couple of things, and please excuse me because I am referencing notes that I took while I was watching the shows. That shows you exactly how involved I am in all this. But I'm going to start off with Raw. So a couple of the things that I thought were really good and were my pops for the week on Raw were Becky Lynch's promo. I thought that was done exceptionally well. I think it forwards the storyline a bit more. It was probably one of her more lit promos as of late. Very cerebral, very interesting storyline wise, and Becky's just great on a mic. Regardless of what you think of her in the ring, she is excellent on a mic. I know a lot of people are pretty much over the whole man persona, but honestly, I think it's something she's going to be able to keep doing, and she's still going to be able to get pops for it. So pop to that. Second pop that I had for Raw was how much more Zelina we got to see. And this was great. Not only was she being used stable-wise with Andrade and Austin Theory and Angel Garza, but her on commentary was actually pretty stellar, and I would love to see more of that. She would be great in that role, as much as I would like to see her more in the ring, because I think there are abilities that she has there that are getting kind of glossed over for her managerial experience. I think that her on commentary was awesome, so that definitely got a pop from me. Some other pops for the night was the sell that Sarah Logan gave to Shayna Baszler when she took that elbow hit. It was done really well. Whoever the camera guy was also added to that as well, since she got the great angle for it, but she just sold it so unbelievable, really. And it's unfortunate now with everything else that has happened to know that Sarah is no longer with the company. So I wish we would have been able to see a lot more of her and she had been able to be better used, but what she left on, I think, was kind of a high note in regards to how well she handled her match with Shayna. Another hit for me was Nia Jax and Kairi Sane. This was a hit for me, and I apologize that it's all kind of women-based. It wasn't the intention, but I'll get to that in a second. Nia and Kairi was a hit for me because beyond Nia's smack talking in the ring, which was great, and it's one of the aspects of having a no-audience crowd that I have personally been really enjoying, beyond that, the storyline of the fight individually amongst itself was wonderful. You have Kairi, who's obviously significantly smaller than Nia. She's going to have to use her agility. She's going to have to use her technique. She's going to have to use her quickness. But then you have Nia, who is just this indomitable force, the irresistible force. I prefer to say indomitable force because I think she's just, there's no other word for it. But you have her coming into the ring and just completely owning Kairi, which is exactly what you would expect. So it was good to see that. They both sold it so exceptionally well. It was so well done and so well played that that match in and of itself was a good storyline driven match without having any other additional storyline on the backside of it. And that's something I'm going to get to too when I reference back to Smackdown in just a little bit. The interesting thing that I noted with this particular episode of Raw, at least from what I got to see, I believe there were some other matches that I did not get to see, but from the condensed down version that I saw, there were 5 actual wrestling matches total. 3 of them were women's division and 2 of them were men's. So that was kind of interesting to me. I'm not sure if it was like that for the whole entire show, which is again why I would really like to be able to get the full live experience back. And that way too, I can live tweet during them as well when I'm watching them. So that would actually be an added bonus. But regardless, so that I thought was rather interesting for Raw, that Raw was it seemed to be a very female heavy show this week. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's important that the women's division gets that push. And like I've said before, writing stories for women is no different from writing stories for guys. It's really not. And I don't know why people think that they have to be written differently, but that's simply not the case at all. The big blown spot for me for Raw this week, though, and I think it's going to be a blown spot going forward so long as he is involved, is Jerry Lawler. Now, I remember Lawler back during the aggression era, and all of the ways in which his character in particular played into the themes and the storylines of that particular time period. Back then, it was perfectly fine. It was comical. It was funny. It borderlined on sexist and misogynistic and racist. And those aspects of it weren't funny at that time period. But for the storylines that were being given to us during the aggression era, his personality and his persona fit. Fast forward 20 years, though, and we've all moved forward. We've all progressed, I would hope. We have all recognized certain things as not being appropriate. And the things that worked back in 1999 for commentary are not things that are going to work now. It's just the way things are. Times change. Storylines have to change to fit the times. And having someone like Lawler on commentary, unfortunately, is a throwback to those periods, and those periods when they happened in that time period, in that context, that was appropriate. That is no longer the case. So the biggest blown spot for me has been Lawler and bringing Lawler back into the fold. Honestly, at this point, the man should just retire. He is a product of a bygone era that no longer fits into the way society currently is. And a considerable number of the things that he says are either at the best juvenile, at the worst, they're sexist, they're misogynistic, and they borderline on racist, if not being actually racists. So in that regards, Lawler's going to be the blown spot for me for Raw for the night. I didn't really have any other blown spots that I got to see. So with that, I'm going to move into SmackDown. So for SmackDown, I didn't have as many notes. And the reason for that is because I didn't have as many things that were of interest for me. It wasn't that there were a considerable number of blown spots or even a considerable number of pops. I just kind of was overall not interested in the show as much. And I don't know if that has to do to the fact that it was after all of the layoffs last week and the furloughs and all of the news of people losing their jobs. And therefore the overall feel of the show felt a little down to me. Or whether it's just the fact that the storylines that were written for SmackDown just weren't as good. And my point on that is that one of the pops for me was actually Moment of Bliss. I think that started it off well. I like the way they are taking the storyline with Braun and Bray. I love the fact that they were able to use Team Little Big, as a way to sort of move that storyline along with Alexa's relationship with Braun in the past, and having that come kind of full circle there, and then being able to fold that into Braun's current storyline with Bray. So all that I think was a pop. I think that was handled really well. All of a sudden the package shows up and Braun sees it and, hey, is that for me? I like how they tried to play it off, but you could tell it was exceptionally staged, and I wish that was a little bit more organic. I almost wish that somebody would have maybe handed Nikki the package and Nikki could have been like, oh yeah, we were told to bring this to you. Or if even a crew member had brought it up and just kind of said, knock, knock, by the way. I think that would have made it feel a little bit more organic instead of just leaving it on the side of the mat and having Braun just notice it and call attention to it, because it made it feel a little bit more forced. But otherwise, the whole Moment of Bliss package to me was a pop. Another pop for me was the Jeff Hardy vignette. And I will tell you right now, the Hardy Boys have always been a main draw for me. They were within my age range when I was watching them when they premiered. And they set the bar. I think we can all agree on how wrestling matches can be done, and also how they shouldn't be done necessarily. We are all well aware of the trials and tribulations that both Matt and Jeff have had over the course of their careers. beyond just the toll it's taken on their bodies, obviously things that have happened to them and their personal lives in dealing with everything that has been done and the pain that comes with all of the spots that they do is obviously apparent. So to see them do this vignette for Jeff and to kind of not shy away from that, to embrace it, to bring that in. I know WWE has done the 24 before on the Hardys, and they addressed it there as well. So it's not something that they've ever tried to hide or push aside. And I think by them embracing it with bringing him back is a good way of handling that, as well as also helping him to handle his recovery. So I thought that was handled very well and was a huge pop for me. Another huge pop for me was the whole storyline with Mandy and Sonya. That was done so well, and both women handled it so perfectly. It's not chef's kiss level perfect, but it felt organic. It felt like two friends that had had a falling out. It felt like Sonya's heel turn was kind of complete in that moment, and she did it so well. I think both women have been highly underrated, and I think they both bring a ton to the ring, and I think they are both showing that they are able to drive the storyline further as well on their mic skills and their out-of-ring stuff. So that was a huge pop for me, and I think it was handled perfectly. You know, folding Dolph and Otis into that at the end of it to kind of reiterate that, I think was awesome. Again, Dolph Ziggler, I mean, Nick Nemeth is, I've said it before in other videos, and I think it's something I will continue to say. The man is just a completely untapped talent. He's great in the ring. He's amazing outside of it. And he just brings a whole level of dedication to the craft that I think a lot of people somewhat overlook as well. So that was a huge pop for me. The blown spots for me that night, though, were the Dana Brooke and Naomi Money in the Bank qualification match. I understand that it's a Money in the Bank match and it's a qualification match, so there's not going to necessarily be a storyline between those in the ring. It's just kind of, you know, we're all competing to get to this point so we can get that briefcase. However, and this is going to throw back to Nia Jax and Kairi Sane. Nia Jax and Kairi Sane don't have a storyline at all, but they created one in the ring that was very well done, very well handled. Dana Brooke and Naomi obviously don't have a storyline going into this. Dana Brooke's storyline is heading off with Carmella into the tag team, but there wasn't a connection enough to drive the storyline within the ropes. And though both women did exceptionally well athletically, and both women are exceptional athletes and have a ton to bring, the connection just wasn't there to be able to further the tiny little micro storyline that should have been happening in place, and it just didn't do it. So that was a blown spot for me. It just felt like it was too rushed, and it felt like it was too quickly put together under the circumstances, so it kind of brought all that to light. The other blown spot for me on Raw this week was honestly just the whole episode. Especially toward the end of the night on Friday night show, I was losing interest, which shouldn't have been happening with matches like Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro, as well as the three-man repeat tag team champion defending non-tag team match. Obviously with Daniel Bryan and Cesaro, we're going to get a great match. I don't think those two men can get into a ring and not give us an amazingly stellar, technically beautiful match. There's just no way around it. The reason why I don't give it a pop, though, is because by that point in time, I had lost interest in the show. And I was kind of off sort of doing other things and checking in on here and there. And it shouldn't have been that way. So because of that, the whole show overall kind of got a blown spot for me. They had little pops here and there, and the pops that they had were great. Don't get me wrong. But the overall episode for the night just, I don't know. I don't know if it was just the writing team was off, which happens. You know, we're all human. That's the thing that happens. But Smackdown overall ended up being a blown spot for me. So that brings me to the end of my pops and blown spots for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm also going to be doing a second video tagging off of this, doing a tag team match tonight on my videos in preparation for tonight's Raw. And that video is going to go over my thoughts on the layoffs and firings that happened last week on Black Wednesday, or what's being referred to as Black Wednesday. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to try to put a card up in here somewhere for you to be able to cross-reference that video. And again, by all means, if you have enjoyed my thoughts, my comments, or my perspectives, please feel free to give me a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell below so that you can get updated on content when I upload it. I am trying to do so at least on a weekly basis with my pops and balloon spots, but I'm also going to try to add some other content in here and there as well. Also, make sure you follow me on social so you can get notifications there in case the notification bell doesn't work, because we all know YouTube's wonderful. Until next week, guys, have a great time, and I will see you then. Thanks.